Welcome to another episode of the True vs. Truth podcast. I am your host, Matt Forte.
And I am Danielle Forte.
And this season, we're talking about the kingdom perspective. But today's specific episode will be about parenting from a kingdom perspective.
Yes.
So, as we mostly always do, let's open up with the word.
Go ahead, right ahead.
I believe you wanted Ephesians, right? Ephesians 6, specifically verse 4. Okay. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord.
You're coming in hot.
Yeah.
That, you went straight to discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First of all, let's talk about discipline in our home and how it is, how it's evolved.
So this is awesome to talk about because in one of the other episodes from this season, we talk about marriage. And so this is kind of the ripple effects of how things come through marriage and your parenting skills and being on the same page, because God calls you to be one in your marriage. You got to be on the same page with parenting your children, but more specifically, discipline too. So, I've seen it where there's some parents who are like, or, maybe the wife is like, nah, you're being too hard on them. Don't discipline them at all. And then the father's like overbearing, like don't exasperate your children, like it says. And so you have to be on the same page first. So in our household, I grew up with all boys in the house. Obviously my mom, being there, she was the only female, but my dad and then my older brother. So we was rough. Like everything was rough. Tough.
What do you mean was?
Currently. Yeah, I mean the Lord is softening my heart.
Okay, it's softening.
But we all are in a transformation process. We're never, fully there.
Okay.
Sanctification. Right. So my original parenting just came out of that.
It wasn't just that.
Of what? Well, football, sports, and all of that. Like, there's not a lot of grace given in sports. I mean, you get it wrong once. The second time you get it wrong, it's like, all right, you about to get canceled, or cut. So then, as far as like discipline, like you got to learn immediately. Like it makes no sense if you mess it up once. If you do it twice, then you're not listening. Like you're not paying attention. So I ruled with an iron fist in our household.
Oh yes.
Until my wife, who's full of wisdom from the Lord, had to tell me that girls are different. Girls are much different. You can't yell at girls like that. You have to speak truth to them with a serious tone, but you could speak as mellow as you're talking right now, and it will bring tears to their eyes.
That is right.
It will bring change to their behavior.
Correct. But
as always, life and parenting is not about behavioral modification.
True.
True transformation is from the heart. And I've heard Tony Evans, and we've talked about this many times, say that rules without relationship incites rebellion. So that's another nugget for you guys that Tony Evans always drops those nuggets to keep out there as parents.
I think when we talk about disciplining children, and I've watched many, I was going to say a plethora. If you know me, that's my word. That's my jam. And I knew he was going to make that smirk. But I've seen many friends, family members, acquaintances. I've watched them parent because I am an observer. And I've seen a lot of them go one or two ways, like you said. It's either iron fist or nothing at all.
Or murky water.
Or murky waters. Like, I'm going to discipline you, but then I'm going to take it back.
Or like, sometimes it kills me when you see someone, like, discipline their child, but then they give it to them anyway.
Yeah, what's the point? There's no point.
You'll say something, but continue to let them.
It's false follow-through.
Yeah.
So in our house, my father and mother, they had high expectations as far as discipline.
Okay.
I guess that also comes along with being a pastor's child, because then you are also
Under a microscope.
Under a microscope. So for them, it was, hey, you know your expectations, do them. I never got whoopings like many from the 90s, 80s, and before did. But that's because all my dad had to do was look at me and I was a ball of emotions.
I still say you should have got a few whoopings.
For what? All you had to do.
Because then you wouldn't be so spicy with me.
I needed the spice to get through things in my life. Look, I had a pastor when I told him that Nala was spicy, our oldest girl. I said, Nala's spicy. He said, don't take it away from her. Yeah. She's going to need that to deal with something in her life. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know what? You're right. If someone had taken my spiciness away, I don't know if I would have survived many of the things, conversations, and conflicts.
I'm from Louisiana. I like spicy.
You like spicy. You
spice.
Like some cayenne, okay? So, but what I will say is kids want discipline.
Yeah.
And I tell this to people all the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying that because they yearn, most of the time, if they're acting out, it's for attention.
Yeah.
So you want discipline, and God calls us to discipline our children, not abuse our children, not, and I mean verbal and physical, not to talk down to them, emotional, but to discipline them in a loving, godly, kind manner.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take the seriousness and the severity from things either.
Yeah, that's right. And then when we talk about discipline and the lack thereof, I mean, it's you're setting your child up for failure if you don't want to discipline them.
Oh, yeah.
And the word of the Lord says that God disciplines those he loves. Mm-hmm. So it's not like God's being hard on you or like, and the same thing with your parents. And there's just a way to go about it. Mm-hmm. We can't discipline out of our own fleshly behaviors. You have to discipline knowing the character of God. What's his character? He's full of grace and truth. Mm-hmm. Discipline out of that, grace and truth. You got to give grace. You know, if you're always on them all the time, then every word you say, they think is going to be reproach. You know what I mean? Some kind of discipline action. Then they won't hear what you're saying. They'll just react to the body language that you have. And so sometimes I've noticed with our kids, like Lil Matt, if I'm talking to him a certain way, his ears aren't working. He'll look at me, and it's just he's looking at how I look. But now if I sit him down and I look him dead in his eyes and I use an authoritative tone with him, not yelling, but just, you know, a deeper voice and just like my normal voice, and talk to him and just speak facts. You know, it's like, you need to do this because, and tell you why. And that helps.
So taking away that old age, but why? Because I said so. It's not because I said so. Because there's always a why.
We as parents, that's the easy thing, because you expect them to be obedient and behave a certain way. And then if you say, what if God said because I said so? And there was no explanation behind the scriptures. Rebellion. Well, the way through. And we already rebel with the why.
Yeah,
with the why. So the why is so important when you talk about being a parent, and because you can't just condemn things. When you condemn stuff, children want to go out and do exactly what you condemn.
I think also being approachable.
Yeah.
Now we're moving into a new stage of parenting. We had littles. Now we're getting into those years. Y'all pray for us. With an 11 and a 9-year-old, where it's time for, well, it was already time for serious conversations that we've been having. But I want them all to be able to approach us with any question, with any topic, no matter how uncomfortable I might feel. Now I had that's when I say, God, check my body language and my heart, but give me the words to talk about these things. Because then you start talking about all the things that come up that I don't want them to hear from their friends. I don't want them to talk about body changes or sex or same sex relationship, gender, any of those things. I don't want them talking to their teachers, to their friends about it before they talk to me and before I give them a biblical explanation for it. And if I'm not approachable,
then you get those parents who are like, I never knew that was going on. I never knew my child was feeling this way, which is the worst thing you want to hear.
And it's happening earlier.
It's more of a reactionary thing. Like, this happened. I never knew she felt or he felt that way. And I want to, that intimate relationship we talk about and we want to seek with God.
In our marriages.
We have to seek that intimate relationship with our children where they feel comfortable with talking about anything.
Well, then you always think if we look back at what's been going on, I want to say in the last 5 to 10 years, and the rate for suicide for children, and I mean starting at 5 years old.
That's insane.
Children at 5 years old saying, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I couldn't be able to fathom with myself, what could I have done differently? So I know I can't control everything as a parent. Yeah. That's why I have to lean and have faith on God. But I also have to know that his instructions, they have to spill over into my children. And that means having the hard worldly conversations, and not the just because I said so, not the, the old, like, we don't talk about that in church. No, we are going to talk about everything, taboo or not.
Because the world's going to throw everything at them.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to combat that with those conversations constantly. And it's from everything, from all kind of different types of media, movies, cartoons. There's subliminals everywhere. And so you have to put the armor of God on your children at a young age so that they know how to. You can obviously shield them and defend them from certain things, but the word is going to defend them the most when they leave the nest, when they leave the house.
Well, it's the overarching topic that as parents we forget. And I've said this in other podcasts before. We are called to disciple.
Yeah.
The ultimate commission, but how we can't disciple anything outside of our home before we disciple and steward everything that's in our home. And that starts with our marriage, that starts with ourselves, and then that goes to our children.
Yeah. Like we just read Ephesians 6.
Right.
It said, before it says fathers don't exasperate your, or after it says fathers don't exasperate your children, it says bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord, aka raise your children.
Exactly.
Fathers, he's talking to us. So the biggest challenge one time when I was a young Christian, a guy and we were like newly married, a guy was like, why you want some pastor preaching to your wife? You should be your wife's pastor. You should be in the home. I'll go there to church on Sunday. You should be preaching to her during the week. And y'all should be studying the word together and like you trying to help her spiritually grow. And in doing so, you're discipling your wife, but then you grow. When everybody who's discipling someone knows that when you are discipling someone, the word is really preaching to you.
Absolutely.
And so same thing with your children. That's the male's responsibility to do that, to cover his whole household. In that. But, people say, well, how do you do that? I mean, where do we get this from? It's not easily found. No. You ain't going to find it by looking at TV shows every day, all day. And like, you got to make a commitment. Like, let me not watch or binge watch this show. Let me read the word a little bit.
I will say this for many newly married young couples. Let me not get on Call of Duty or Fortnite. Look.
Yeah.
When Matt and I were dating, I was in college when we first started dating. He would literally come home from practice after games, play Call of Duty for hours. I'd do my homework while he was doing it. I fall asleep on him while he's playing Call of Duty for hours. That stuff, it stopped when Nala was born.
Yeah, immediately.
He tried. I will say he tried like that first week. He's like, oh, you're sleepy? Okay, take a nap. I'll take her with me. She's sleeping. He was, and then it was like, this is not going to work.
Yeah, once they start touching the controllers, you're messing up my kill death ratio. You're messing up my KD ratio.
But then it was up for me. I was like, oh, thank goodness. But what was great about it was that then we found new things that we love to do together. Yeah. And it also, it was godly ordained for something as minuscule to us as video games. But it prompted us to have more intentional time together. It prompted us to organize our time so when we're doing things separate that we do it to come back as a family, because we realized this is not just an example for us. This is not just about us. Now it also includes our daughter, and we have to be able to show her that we're not caught up in everything else, no matter how, because they learn so young.
Yeah. You watch everything you do.
Everything.
And so I've learned from a young age too that more so now that just as Jesus when he was in the wilderness was like, Father, do I have to drink from this cup? Our cup is coming around too, and you're gonna have to drink from it. And that doesn't mean like, you know, it doesn't sound like it's the greatest thing, obviously, because like you can be right in the center of the will of God, but then trials and tribulations come into your life. You have to deal with those things. Just because you're a Christ follower doesn't mean everything's going to be okay and easy and happy-go-lucky. So, I mean, keyword, testimony. What's the first word of testimony? Test. So if you're not preparing your children for a test, they're going to fail. They're going to fail every time. And failure is not bad as long as you learn from that.
Right.
But you need preparation. We like to prepare for everything. I'm going to put my clothes out the night before because I got to get up early to go to work. I'm going to go to the gym.
Make
Let
my
me
lunch.
prepare for this.
Yeah.
You know, football's all about preparation.
Yep.
But you won't prepare for life?
How does that work?
For your marriage? For fathering and parenting your kids?
But that stage doesn't end, though. It doesn't just end when they're little. It doesn't just end when they're starting to go through puberty age. It doesn't end when they're in high school. I was recently talking to your mom. I didn't even tell you this. I was talking to your mom, and I said, hey, Mommy G, like, explain to me, what was it like for you and Daddy G when, like, y'all were empty nesters all of a sudden? What happened? Because then you go into a new stage of parenting. And she was like, well, honestly, it was fine until when he retired, it wasn't a problem. It was like, oh my gosh, I have to learn this person. I have to know this person. And all I could think about was, oh my gosh, that's why we have to be so intentional when we're parenting, that we don't get lost in our parenting. Now, we love both of us. His parents, my parents, they're like an odd foursome of friends that doesn't happen normally. And we hang out with them a lot.
I thank God for that.
I know. I'm grateful. But I often wonder if they didn't have children that like to still hang out with them or bring them around for extended amounts of time, what would that look like for a marriage that they didn't learn each other?
Yeah.
Or stay in touch throughout parenting? What would that marriage look like when they become empty nesters?
Yeah.
And they didn't have that afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, that's a key point, because I think we don't think about that. We always think our little baby's going to look like that and be like that forever. What about when they
Parenting
grow
doesn't
up?
end.
I can tell you from experience, like, I'm a far different man than I was in college. I'm far different when I was playing football.
Oh, yes.
I'm far different from my rookie year to halfway through.
To now.
From halfway through to
And,
a 10-year vet. You know what I'm saying? Like, way different. Spiritually, emotionally, like everything. And so as
guys,
your
he has
kids,
emotions now, more than two.
as your kids grow, you have to grow as their parents too. A lot of people parent out of the thought process of, that's my little baby, and that it changes. So you've
already torn me out of that with Maddie.
Yeah, you have to, change your
perspective,
not approach. Well, approach sometimes, like how you talk to them and like what you talk about and all of that. But sometimes we put these fake fears in our brain as parents and try to defend our kids from it, when guys, like, they gotta go out and have their own testimony and like their own walk with me, and you don't know what that looks like. So how you gonna defend them from something you don't know? You don't know what I'm bringing your way.
Exactly.
So I think it'd be wrong of us to just think of them as one type of person for the rest of their life. But as we continue, Proverbs. I want to talk about Proverbs because a lot of people may listen to the podcast, and there may be some children too, because this is for parents and children. Read Proverbs. I mean, if you talk about
the easiest instructions.
I wish when I was coming up, someone would have said, "Hey, man, just look at the wisdom of Proverbs." It's Solomon talking to his children. It says sons, but he's talking to boys and girls. He's talking to everything. He talks about wisdom calls out, but and it refers to her as a she, wisdom, and that she actually calls out and is giving invitation for you to have wisdom, but also the adulterous woman calls out in the streets and roams and looks for that. So how important is that? If Solomon is telling his sons all of these things, and Solomon had it all the money,
looks,
a bunch of women,
all of it,
too many wives.
He was he was what every celebrity male today aspires to be.
Well, he's a lot smarter than them.
Well, I said God, aspires. I didn't say what.
God asked him, if I can give you one thing, what you want. He said wisdom. So he's brilliant for that. But like you said, like we got the price tag wrong.
You want the wisdom, not the show.
Not the world.
That's
you want
right.
The wisdom, not the world. So this just has everything for parents. I mean, it's a parenting guide.
It is, truly.
And so as we move on, I guess, to the next point, I wanted to talk about with parenting as a kid. Like this is for the kids, because we always talk from the parenting perspective.
Right.
We are children, though.
We are.
So
I still call my mom.
How do you not get into, or if you've already entered that phase of everything you're doing, like you want to please your parents, right? It says honor your mother and father, but everything you should do, pleasing wise, is to please the Lord. But when you start to use it at like your parents, it's like I don't want to do this because this may not be what they want for my future. But what your parents want for your future, I mean, it depends on who they've been talking to. Maybe if they've been talking to God, then it might be it may line up with His will for you. But if not, there's some, like we said, there's some things we try to shield our kids from that we don't know God's path for them. Yeah. So like you can mess up or hinder yourself a little bit as a child because you're like, well, my parents they want me to be a doctor. And I guess I'll go to medical school, or they want me to do this. I guess I'll do this, but it's not your passion or purpose, and we can't do stuff or not do stuff because we think our parents will look down on it, or maybe they do look down on it. Like I've seen many people who like went through, got a degree in something, started it, and it was not fulfilling, and then they started doing something else that was like in the caste system that is considered lower than what they got the degree for. And they were joyous and happy, and they were like, you know what? I was afraid that my parents wouldn't, be proud of me because of what I'm doing. But now they see the person I am. They see the fruit of what I'm doing. I'm living in purpose. Yeah. For, God's purpose for me.
Even if they don't see it. Yeah. That's the other thing. There's also times when God has ordained things and you're walking in His purpose, and your parents might not even see it. They might not have any clue. But I think you said it when you said purpose. The fact of the matter is we can't chase after what our parents want our purpose to be because they don't know our purpose. Yeah, just
every parent wants you to be a lawyer, a doctor, a professional.
Without question.
Whatever.
But we don't even know our parents' purpose. We are not deemed to talk and sit and talk to God. Hey, God, tell me what Nala's purpose is about to be. Let me... Honestly, that's where that intimacy with Christ comes in also. The purpose is when you sit down and you talk to God and you say, hey, God, tell me what you want for my life, not what my mom, my dad, my siblings, any of those things, because it will never fulfill you. Yeah. The only person who can fill your cup is God. So when you take that purpose and you let it flourish out to what it's supposed, it doesn't matter who's celebrating it or not celebrating it, as long as it's ordained by God and is driven by God and not by what my personal passion, most passions, not all passions are purposes also. So once you find that direct passion that is a purpose from God, that's where the other side of parenting comes in. It's like, okay, maybe God, this is not what I wanted for them, but you're doing things in their life that
I think the key thing is to see where their interests are and support that. I can't force my kids to be athletes or try to. I tell my kid, you don't, especially my sons, like, hey, you don't have to be me. You don't have to play sports for me to be proud of you and all that. I'll be just as proud if you doing God's will for your life. And that's what's most important.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise you're trying to fit a circle peg into a triangle hole, like the little kid
I see your visual.
blocks thing.
The blocks thing.
Yeah. The little toy that they play with.
I see where you're going.
It won't fit.
You're right. That's accurate.
But we come to that time where if there's anybody, parent or kid, because the cross is for everyone,
Amen.
to place your faith in Christ. Romans says if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus Christ died and was raised from the dead, that you will have salvation. You will be saved. Christ died for everyone, Jew and Gentile. So if you don't have a relationship with God, you can always have one. Or if you've had one and you haven't been to church and you've backslidden and all this, kind of stepped away from the faith, it's never too late to come back. God's grace outruns all of our sin. So if you want to do that, you can just close your eyes and say this prayer. Lord, I know I am in need of a Savior, and I know you're the only one that can do that. The only way to the Father is through you, through Jesus. And so I believe that God almost messed up. I believe that Jesus was born of a virgin, suffered and died and was buried, but rose on the third day. And if you believe that in your heart and believe and confess that with your mouth, then salvation has been attained, not on any works of our own, but by all of the work that Jesus Christ did while he was here. So if you said that, welcome to the club.
Yay!
And you should stay connected and dive in the word. Go to the True Verse Truth Podcast website, which is trueversetruthpodcast.com.
It's not up there.
Okay. Make sure I got that right. But visit us on the website, check it out. And there's many connection tools, but we wanted you to stay engaged in that. So catch you next time on the True Verse Truth Podcast.